Hey guys, I went undefeated with Baromagnes at my past locals. 4 rounds. First round was Prison. Second round was Hexa Orb, I believe. Yeah, it was Hexa Orb. Third round was... Damn, what was third round? Third round was Magnolia, and fourth round was Overlord. So let's get into the... Well, let's get the... more or less the defensive slash ride line cards out of the way. We're running the Baromagnes full ride line. It's just the ride line that gets us the most soul right now, so you really don't have any better options. Could be cheeky and play some of the Bruce cards, but there's really no reason to because it nets you less soul. And then in terms of what I mean in the defensive cards, I mean the 4 PGs. These are your your standard 20 cards of shield and triggers. 4 PGs, 1 Galmage. The reason we're playing Galmage over the Cray-Elemental, I keep forgetting its name. The Cray-Elemental one is just, I value the extra crit more. It's just it's like you're running 8 critical triggers, except this last critical trigger stays on your Vanguard all the time. Just the 10k and the critical is just so much pressure at any point in the game, in my opinion. So that's why we're running the Galhold. And then we're running 4 of the 20k shield fronts, just because this deck needs as much shield as it can get. 4 heal, standard. And then technically 8 crit. So now that we got that out the way, we can get to the actual deck profile. Alright. Now I'm running 3 of the Persona Ride. I feel like you should always max out on the copies of the Persona Ride. It just really helps with your push turns. And you don't have to rely so heavily on Curtis's Counterblast skill, even though you always want to use Curtis's Counterblast skill, but it would be more like an addition. You're not like making up the fact that you don't run the Persona Ride. And you could just toolbox it out of your soul. That's what I love about this deck. Like, it could toolbox it out of the soul, it could toolbox whatever shield you need out of the soul, any missing pieces. Like, it's great. And then for Curtis, he's just like literally one of your key cards in the deck. Soul Charge to one place, and then his other ability just allows you to push. So, you know, you want to max copies out on that. Just 5k to the front row is just so helpful, considering your Vanguard only stands for 23. That makes it 28. And then last grade 3 I'm running is 4 Supernatural Extraction. This is, oh my god, this is such a good card in this deck. Supernatural Extraction literally lets you fetch any card out of your soul. And plus, on your first grade 3 turn, Supernatural Extraction plus Curtis is 10 cards in soul, and you can grab whatever you want. Or Supernatural Extraction plus any of your other soul charge cards still makes 10 if you grab another soul charge card. So I just feel like you want to max out on copies of Supernatural Extraction. You only want to use it once, twice maximum, but I'm maxing out on copies of it because you want to see it. You always want to activate this on your first grade 3 turn because it just helps you set up. You pressure on your first grade 3 turn, and then you kill on your 4th turn because you're persona riding and doing 5 attacks ideally. So those are the grade 3s. And then we're moving on to the grade 2s. Now, I'm running a lot of 2s in this deck because I value the early game. There is no late game with Baromagnes. If you get into the late game, you're in a losing battle. I value the early game heavily with Baromagnes. I want to attack as soon as possible. So that's why we're maxing out on our grade 2s. We're playing 4 Selfish Engraver. She's our countercharger, and an on hit, they never let her hit. That's what I love about this guy. They never let Selfish Engraver hit. She's basically like, on attack, take a card out of your opponent's hand. 15k shield for a 10k attack. I'll take it every day. What people don't realize is, in most situations, you don't need this card to hit. Like, to get to 10. You don't need this card to hit to get to 10. Like, sometimes it comes up to whereas you needed that card to hit to get to 15, but you either have full 15 combo, or like you just have, I'll just swing with 10k and a crit, which is still like pressure. So we're maxing out on copies of that just because it's a counter charge, you need to see it. And then we're running 4 of, Expeller, Crimson Expeller. Again, early game rush, he doesn't need to hit, he just soul charges this plus Supernatural Extraction. You can grab any soul charge card from your soul, like another Expeller, and just keep going. So it's just, you want to max out on copies of this card. His second ability does come up sometimes if I wanted to give extra power to my Vanguard if I need to hit a certain threshold and I just happen to have the Counterblast to expend. Because the only things that Counterblast in this deck is your Vanguard, Curtis if you're using Curtis's ability, and Extraction. And then the last grade 2 we're running is, we're not actually running Electro Spartan, we're running 4 of Pestilent Talon. Now, the idea of Pestilent Talon is, this is 4 more copies of Crimson Expeller, and this is 4 more copies of Selfish Engraver in terms of their soul charge abilities. And let me tell you why. When your opponent sees these 2 cards on the field, they'll attack it. They'll attack Rearguard into it, they'll attack Vanguard into it, and they'll leave you at relatively low damage for no reason, because I'll still have combo anyway. Because your ideal turn is to get to 10 on grade 3 ride. You're not trying to get to 15. Usually you're just, that's an overexertion. 15 is on your turn 4. But sometimes, you just open up broken. But her, if you don't know what she does, her ability is front row only. When you ride your Vanguard, soul charge 1. This doesn't cost Counterblast. It's just so good because you can call it, rush with it, and then it becomes an attack target. It becomes another attack target because, I don't want this card on the field because he could soul charge with it. When in reality, you already got the amount of soul. You already checked off your little checklist for your grade 3 turn. You don't need it. So this also helps with one of the weaknesses of the deck, because you want to use so many pieces in the early game. You don't really have shield in the early game, especially because if your ride line is really hard to maintain a healthy shield hand in the early, so they'll try to rush you. But if they're rushing you, but they're focusing on your rear guards, they're not really rushing you, because Supernatural Extraction plus Curtis is 10. That's all I wanted. At least that's the way I see it. But yeah, Pestilent Talon actually just, it's, in my opinion at least, in theory, it's really good just because she has a target on her back, and even if they don't pay attention to her, she could become a soul charge too. If you call her on turn 2, you ride your grade 3, soul charge, attack, next turn, persona ride, soul charge again. So she could become a soul charge too, if they let her stay on the field. But most people don't. They're like, oh, it's a soul charge, I have to get rid of it. But you really don't need it. It's just there. And I want to go over why I'm not running any more Electro Spartans. The reason I'm not running any more Electro Spartans is just because of the Counterblast. Like I said, you want to use your Counterblast for Supernatural Extraction. You want to use your Counterblast for Curtis's ability, just to beef up your front row, so that they can't just intercept and then, it turns off your attacks. So that's my reasoning for that. Yeah, that's pretty much my reasoning for that. And then going on to the grade 1s, there's only one grade 1 I play. Sonicer. It's an attacker, it's a booster, it's one of your key cards in the deck, and I feel like it's correct. Let me get the red deck one. I feel it's correct to play 4. Just because there's so many decks in this format right now that have access to some type of removal. Because they always want to get rid of your rear guards. At least in this deck, they always want to get rid of your rear guards. So I just feel like it's crucial to have extra copies. So when you do your push turn, and let's say they retire them or they attack into them, you have the ability to do the same push turn next turn with the same amount of ferocity. So that's why, for me personally at least, I find 4 deep Sonicers is a must, at least in my opinion. Let's see here, we got 9 minutes. Let's go over, I guess I could just go over how I want this. Oh, I almost forgot. I also want to go over why I'm not playing Brother's Soul. The reason I'm not playing Brother's Soul, like, let's say, like, I could have replaced Pestilent Talon with Brother's Soul, or I could have replaced Pestilent Talon with, Electro Spartan. The reason I'm not playing Brother's Soul is because with this deck, I was trying to I'll know another thing that I was trying to do in deck building was minimize the amount of cards I play without shield, because that's another weakness of this deck. Because the way this deck works is when you draw your 5 cards, you really can't afford to keep shield. You can't afford to even keep PGs. You just have to mull for combo. Or, like, you know, if you have the 2 cards that get to the 10, then you could, you know, afford to play a little bit more conservatively. But most of the time, you just have to mull for combo. So, you know, running a lot of cards without shield just can be detrimental in, like, the early to mid game for what I said. Like, you could just get rushed, or you have combo, but you have a bunch of cards in your hand without shield, which actually still happened to me in the last round of the tournament. There was a point where he had game 2. He completely had game 2 by all rights. I had 5 cards in hand. All 5 of them were grade 3s. There was nothing I could do to guard. I was at 2 damage, and he got a crit. I'm like, okay, well, game 3. But, you know, I pulled out a heal, so I was able to just combo him off on next turn, Persona Ride, Curtis, do the whole shebang. But that's just my theory with why I'm not running these 2 cards or any more Soul Charge cards, because at least in my opinion, they're not really needed. Because you're not really... You can do 15, but 15 really isn't the goal. At least for me, 15 really isn't the goal on the first turn. Not the first turn, the first grade 3 turn. I would rather use Supernatural Extraction just because of how fragile this deck is. I'd rather use Supernatural Extraction to grab, like, let's say you Soul Charged an Over Trigger, grab the Over Trigger. Let's say you Soul Charged a PG, grab the PG. Or, like I said, these are the my 3 favorite cards to grab with Extraction if I don't need to grab a combo piece. Over Trigger, PG, or Persona Ride. Oh, if you're lucky enough to get to use it again, usually another thing that I grab with it, if I'm able to use it a second time, is Sonicer or Selfish Engraver, just to help with Curtis combos and numbers. So this is more of like a, I guess, toolboxy version of the deck, but it's not really toolboxy because there's one card that toolboxes, and that's Extraction, which you gotta play it at 4. At least in my opinion, you gotta play it at 4. It's just such a good card not to play at 4, and it's generic too. But anyways, that's it for my deck profile. Like and comment. Tell me in the description what you think about it. If you disagree, just tell me why. You know, we can have like a conversation about it. Those will be like, oh, you know, your deck's wrong. I'm like, oh, okay. Anyways, see you guys.